Is the Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We're live here Wednesday, May 22nd. And look who's here in studio. It's always someone exciting. And tonight, our friend Aisha Moodie-Mills is back. You know, her political strategist here all the time on MS. But now you can see her on CNN a lot with Don Lemon from either 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night with Don.
Yeah.
Eastern time. And you'll be on tomorrow night?
11-ish tomorrow
She'll be on
night.
11 o'clock. And was a fellow at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard. It's completed now. Would you get a diploma, a certificate? What do you get?
No, well, I get hugs and love. No, I hosted a 10-week study group on the rise of the new American majority. So I talked about identity politics in a seminar every week at Harvard Kennedy School, which was really dope. So very exciting.
And now that's done for now. We'll see what happens in the future.
It's done for now. So we'll see if I re-up this conversation elsewhere.
Well, I wish you the best, my friend, but I'm glad you're here tonight. Let me ask you, so breaking news a short time ago, housing and urban development, the Ben Carson, my theory of Carson is that during surgery, too much anesthesia seeped out and he breathed it in. And that's why he's sleepy and has brain damage. So yesterday he testifies there's not going to be any change in the equality rules. Tonight they put out a rule. They want to change it to roll back Obama-era regulations that would not allow operators of single-sex shelters who receive HUD money from discriminating against transgender homeless people. I can't think of someone more vulnerable than a transgender homeless person, and to go to a shelter, which is a shelter, that's the word shelter, to shelter people in need, and go there and be turned away to your face by someone who can do it because the Trump administration said they can do it now. What is your reaction to this garbage?
Exactly. I mean, it is so just sad. It is sad. It is disappointing. This administration at every pass has continued to screw transgender people and to frankly put them in vulnerable positions and put them in harm's way. We just had yet another black trans woman who was murdered all over the country. Trans people are being victimized. They are being assaulted. They are being murdered. And what is particularly troubling is that 40% of all homeless youth happen to be LGBTQ. And most of them are kids of color. So you're talking about a generation of young people, vulnerable young people, who then are growing up and they just don't have any support or access. And now this administration the first thing they did is they said that we're going to essentially remove the Obama administration's protections for trans youth in schools, right? So now leaving kids vulnerable. And now they do this with regards to housing. So and also they reversed the military ban. So this administration has proven that they have a war against trans people among everybody else that they're throwing under the bus. And I got to just say that the secretary, which I will use in air quotes, is a complete
Ben Carson?
asinine
buffoon.
Fool. He is a buffoon.
Right.
If anybody saw him testifying in front of Congress, he doesn't even understand the way that HUD works. Just a fool. Just a fool.
And I'm not sure if we touched on this before, but I think with Danielle we talked about the shocking statistics about trans teenagers and the attempted suicide rate is around 41%, which is astronomical. And when you think about it, part of that is no doubt that the idea that you're made to feel like you don't belong in society. And when you have an administration like Trump saying you don't belong in the military and we're not going to protect you when you're in school. And if you're homeless, we're going to say under the color of law, it is okay to say no to your face, and we're going to still fund that institution in doing that. What is the message that sends to young trans teenagers?
Well, that it doesn't get better.
Yeah.
Right? Like we've been spending so many years with a campaign that says, look, grow up, don't call it quits too young. Grow up. Like things will open up for you. It gets better. And this administration is telling them, and these policies are telling them that they aren't welcome, that they aren't loved, that they aren't wanted, that no one cares for them. And that is just, it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking.
I agree with you. And there's so many reasons that we have to defeat Donald Trump in 2020. And part of me, although I really believe that we should start an impeachment inquiry, specifically the inquiry now, part of me really wants to beat him so badly on November 3rd, 2020, to send a message that we're going to push back on Trumpism, not just Trump, but Trumpism and this celebration of cruelty, which I think underlies so much of Trump. So let's talk, though, about the big issue, which is, first of all, we had the meltdown today. And it all began here. Let's play Nancy Pelosi, which kicked it off at 10 a.m. and it triggered the orange-haired White Walkers, I like to call them. Clip number 1.
It was a very positive meeting, a respectful sharing of ideas, and I think a very impressive presentation by our chairs. We do believe that it's important to follow the facts. We believe that no one is above the law, including the President of the United States, and we believe that the President of the United States is engaged in a cover-up, and that was the nature of the meeting.
Cover up twice. Cover up. And Trump got very, very upset. What's your reaction first to Speaker Pelosi walking this line where she clearly is opposed to the impeachment inquiry? An increasing number of the caucus is getting there to that. What do you think of the job she's doing in trying to keep this caucus intact?
Well, I think that she is doing, I guess I would say, the best that she can. I mean, clearly just a couple of nights ago, was it Monday night, they had a really testy and heated meeting of the leadership of the caucus where people are like, okay, now is the time. And she's still saying, no. This new messaging, though, where the president is engaging in a cover-up, I think is an interesting one. So my Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, who clearly wants to be speaker, has been the messaging guy. And he also has been against impeachment. And he keeps saying, well, we ran on a particular message. We need to push that message. So I don't even know what the hell the message is that they ran on.
The message was holding Trump accountable. So this is completely consistent with that.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I still haven't seen them hold him accountable for much, but nonetheless, I love that, like, at least finally he's putting out a message, and she is parroting a message that at least makes a little bit of sense and gets under Trump's skin. But I think I personally think, Dean, that this is the first time I've heard her say something that felt a bit like a better balance between the people who don't want to come for him, but then all of us, because I myself included, who are saying somebody's got to like choke this guy and hold him accountable, and at least just start digging.
I agree. And then later in
Plain sight, in the public domain, this president is obstructing justice, and he's engaged in a cover-up, and that could be an impeachable offense. Ignoring the subpoenas of Congress was Article 3 of the Nixon impeachment.
So is there been a strategy by her, do you think, not just to put off impeachment, but to build this support for it where she thinks she's making a case, and she is in her own way, that we're not rushing towards impeachment. We're going to slowly do this, and we might get there. I'm trying to look, because I'm being respectful of her, because I have the utmost respect for Speaker Pelosi. And I think at the time of Trump, she's the right person in being able to deal with the rules and keeping the caucus united and stuff like that are really vitally important. This I disagree with her so much on, the impeachment inquiry. I think we should absolutely be there. But I'm trying to see the other side. I'm being objective. Like, forget your own views. Like, I'm just saying, as you as a political activist who's seen so much in politics, is there an upside to what she's doing that we can say objectively, I can see it, I might not agree with it, but I see it?
Yeah, so I think that Nancy Pelosi is certainly brilliant. She's been the most brilliant Speaker of the House in our generation, for sure, and probably of all time in terms of the way that she's maneuvered. I have, from early on, believed that the House strategy was a bloodletting, right? So they're going to slowly kind of figure out ways to really get to him. And if they couldn't derail him while he was in the administration, that they were going to build a big enough case so that the Southern District of New York and whomever else could then come for him civilly, criminally, and otherwise once he left, right? So I have been of that train of thought that these are just smart people up on the Hill who are playing a much longer game than those of us who were like chanting resist. I will offer this, though, that I think we're all kind of on a wait and see. And today, in my opinion, felt like a strong pivot to me from Nancy Pelosi. I think she is brilliant as it relates to the normal course of business and usual times. These are completely unusual times. We're in constitutional crisis. And so I don't know. I mean, there's no precedent for this. So I'm not sure that they know what they're doing at all. I think they're just kind of figuring out as they go along.
I think the way you framed it is so important, that in normal times, that this is how you react. In normal times, how Chuck Schumer's reacting and all of them.
What's he doing again?
Well, he just hangs out and he hides behind Nancy, and Nancy talks. But yeah, in normal times, you find common ground with the Republicans. In normal times, you think, well, at some point we'll get back to norms. You know, we're going to have, and no one is truly a criminal sociopath in the White House. You actually do not believe that. Even at the time of Nixon, perhaps they didn't believe that. Trump is a sociopath. He's a criminal. He's a corrupt mob figure who happens to be in the White House right now. So it's different. And here's
As
Trump.
are his cronies.
Oh my God, it's unreal. Here's Trump just a little bit when he's essentially no soup for you moment. He goes, and I went in the meeting and I'm out of here. Kill his clip 2. We'll go to clip 2.
I walked into the room and I told Senator Schumer, Speaker Pelosi, I want to do infrastructure. I want to do it more than you want to do it. I'd be really good at that. That's what I do. But you know what? You can't do it under these circumstances. So get these phony investigations over with.
So no soup for you. I want to do infrastructure. You want to do it.
He's really good at it.
My small hands want to do it, and you will not. So and now the meltdown. And it's funny, the media is playing it. Fox News is literally ignoring it because I have all the TVs on. MS and CNN are completely online here. It was a Trump meltdown. On some level, Speaker Pelosi has manipulated Trump and been able to get under his skin while being calm, without calling him nicknames or tweeting things about him, sort of like a school mom in a way. And it is working. I mean, he lashed out. He left that meeting in 3 minutes. He went out and said ridiculous things. And the one thing, I won't play any other clips because none of us like to hear his voice. It comes down to victimhood. Everything is victimhood. And that plays for the right. And they view that as leadership. I view that as the opposite of leadership. But they love this victimhood. They're all victims. White people are victims. They're minorities now. They're oppressed. Christians are victims. They're victims on social media. Everything, their whole lives are victims. So when we hear this, it's laughable. But to them, it actually plays to them.
Yeah, because white people in this country are feeling completely oppressed right now. And for those of us who know how utterly just ridiculous and silly that is, look at, who is still in charge of every major institution in this country and every major board of directors, and look at the Fortune 500 and on and on and on and on and on. Look at the entire Republican establishment of elected officials. We know that white people are hardly the ones being oppressed in America. But nonetheless, this is the kind of dog whistle that is really getting to people because they are feeling scared and they're feeling threatened and they're feeling like, oh, that damn, Nancy Pansy is coming for us. And for the president to play that up and say, oh, look at me. Now, here's the irony, Dean. Tell me what you think about this. I think it is so crazy that Donald Trump in one breath can poke out his fat chest and with his stupid fat face claim that he's so big and bad and looks like a blowhorse and he's a tough guy and he does this and he does that and he's the one that can strong arm and negotiate and he's such this big bad mobster. And then in the same breath claims that, oh, poor Nancy's beating up on me and they're just a witch hunt. What's it gonna be, punk? Are you really a big bad, wolf?
No. All right, I'll play one more clip. It's 15 seconds of him lashing out the media. It was like his worst hits. It was like the greatest hits or the worst hits of Trump. And typical thing, here's clip number 6, please.
This whole thing was a takedown attempt at the President of the United States. And honestly, you ought to be ashamed of yourselves for the way you reported so dishonestly. Not all of you, but many of you.
Could you believe that? Not only it's a takedown, and the media's again out me and Robert Mueller. And I keep making this point. I don't know why it's not made more on television. He keeps saying the origins of the investigation. Robert Mueller was appointed by Rod Rosenstein, who was appointed by Donald Trump. Rod Rosenstein's a Republican. He appointed Robert Mueller, who's also a Republican. And Donald Trump, the Republican head of the party, appointed Rod Rosenstein. It wasn't the Democrat. We didn't come up with this. We didn't appoint Robert Mueller. We had nothing to do with that. That was all Republicans appointing other Republicans, who was appointed by another Republican. So I don't get this. We had nothing to do with it. Democrats had nothing to, we weren't even calling for a special count. Maybe a few people, but who cared? They had all the power in the world, and they called for it.
And they didn't get what they wanted out of it, of course. So it's all going to be wrong. I think what all this boils down to is anytime little bratty Donald Trump doesn't get his way, then that means that everybody else is just wrong and out to get him. Not that perhaps he could actually be wrong. Perhaps he is a criminal. Perhaps he is a liar. Perhaps he is a crook, or at minimum, just completely inept to do his damn job.
Criminal, right? And here was the thing. And I don't know what to make of this because Trump goes to this meeting, supposed to be a meeting about infrastructure. He storms out. When they walk in, Chuck Schumer talked earlier about they go into the meeting, or Steny Hoyer, they go into the meeting in the cabinet room, and for some reason the curtains are all closed. They don't know why, because the press conference was set up on the other side. Trump is not there. when he walks in, there's no chair for him. He comes in and talks for 3 minutes and then storms out to his press conference. And here's Nancy Pelosi again at the CAP Ideas Conference talking about how it was staged. And I want to get your sense of why in Trump's mind did he think this staged event was actually upside for him? And we don't think like them, and Fox News is right behind you, because when things don't make sense to me, and it makes them happy, it just shows I'm just wired differently. So here is Nancy Pelosi clip number 7 at the CAP Ideas thing.
In an orchestrated, almost to an oh poor baby point of view, he came into the room and said that I said that he was engaged in a cover-up and he couldn't possibly engage in a conversation on infrastructure as long as we are investigating him. Now, we've been investigating him since we took the majority, so there's nothing new in that. But and then he had a press conference in the Rose Garden with all this sort of visuals that obviously were planned long before I said most currently that he was engaged in a cover-up.
Right, and he walked out. They had these signs made up with how much money was spent and no construction, no collusion, and so he's supposed to have a meeting with Democrats on infrastructure, and instead he plays this game to do this press conference. What do you think without his mind, just politically, what do you think was going on here?
The only place that this clown has ever really, really won, well, I guess in 2 places, defrauding people with his business and defrauding, his taxes, and then also in the stagecraft and wizardry of media. And so when he is on the rocks, he always goes straight for some kind of like optics and media narrative. He knew damn well that he was going to have no brokering, nowhere to go with any conversation around infrastructure. So he resorts to the playing field that he knows best, where he thinks he can win, and that's going to be all about the stagecraft and the media, like dog and pony show. It's always The Apprentice for Donald Trump. It's always The Apprentice.
It's interesting to me, and I actually like having Fox News on in a way. It's more about story selection, as in closed caption, but none of them in the 3 hours I've been here have started with Trump gets the best of Nancy Pelosi. That's nothing like that. They've ignored the story almost. They go, it was a falling out, and really they have not done it as a victory lap for Trump. And I really think that he did this thinking, look at Trump, how tough he is. He walked out on the Democrats and he showed them and he embarrassed them by having this press conference. And instead of you play any clip from the press conference, it's laughable. I've got to play one more. This is my favorite one of the whole thing. Clip number 3. It's only like 29 seconds. Listen to the end of it.
So I came here to do a meeting on infrastructure with Democrats, not really thinking they wanted to do infrastructure or anything else other than investigate. And I just saw that Nancy Pelosi, just before our meeting, made a statement that we believe that the President of the United States is engaged in a cover-up. Well, it turns out I'm the most, and I think most of you would agree to this, I'm the most transparent president probably in the history of this country.
Who needs comedians? Is that the funniest thing ever? And he just says
right.
that.
Where the fuck are your tax receipts?
There's so much.
Where the hell are your taxes?
There's so many lists of things. But even then, I have to be honest, and I don't know what Hannity will do. Hannity is the biggest defender. Like Tucker Carlson's a white nationalist. It's Tucker Klansman. That's what he's about. And there are times he breaks from Republican dogma and applauds certain Democrats because he's anti-big corporations and stuff like that. It's a weird populism of white nationalism with Tucker. Laura Ingraham is much more pro-Trump, and so is Hannity. So I'm sure they'll spin it like that. But in the first 3 hours, there's been no spinning that Trump got the best of Nancy Pelosi, because they can't say that. Even Tucker can't say it with a straight face. So I don't think this fulfilled his expectations. I really thought, I could be wrong, but we know he loves the media and he loves headlines. And I think he wanted the headline to be is Trump got the best of Speaker Pelosi. He walked out and he showed them who's going to be boss. And no one
When was the last
it.
time that was actually the headline? I mean, that's the thing, right? Is that he continue. I think what's so frustrating for him is that he keeps trying to get this same headline that's actually not really coming. I mean, Fox News completely dissed him at one point. They just decided they were going to stop covering every rally that he did, right? They kind of backed off a little bit. So he is spinning. I mean, he's literally like a spitting top, out of control. Like I'm imagining him spinning in a circle, his face and cheeks just turning like from orange to red, and like steam coming out the top of his head like an emoji. Because
his little hands grabbing the remote control.
His little bitty hands, right?
Throwing a remote control against the wall.
No one's paying him any attention, and he doesn't even know what to do at this point. How about turn over your tax returns? We'll all be paying attention then.
That's a really important one. How about letting Don McGahn testify? Obviously, McGahn can testify if he want. I had Chris Liu on right before you made the point.
Somebody go find that man, throw him in jail.
But I think it's remarkable, though. You had two federal judges this week side with the Democrats. One right before we came on air, about the subpoenas to Deutsche Bank, to Mazer Financial. So but it's not over. Then they appeal. And this could last a year. It could last 2 years. It could last 6 months. Even if it's expedited, we're talking 3 or 4 months. We're not. And then they'll appeal again, Supreme Court. And so it stays in limbo while they're waiting to see if it gets granted cert or not up there. But let's take a quick break. We're here with our friend Aisha Moodie-Mills, the Dean Obeidallah Show.
The Dean Obeidallah Show.
Voting is the most important civil right of our era because the right to vote preserves all other rights. It's not the Second Amendment. It's not guns. It's voting.
Sirius XM Progress. You're listening to the Dean Obeidallah Show, Sirius XM's Progress.
And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live Wednesday, May 22nd here. Let's take a quick call here about tax returns. Jennifer, let's take this. Jennifer, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you, Dean?
Fine. Are you on speakerphone? Because please take us off speakerphone.
No, I'm not. But I'm on my earphones.
I knew something. It just didn't sound as clear. That's why. For us, if it doesn't sound as clear to me, it sounds worse on people's radios, as I've learned by hosting this show. So what is your... Because
is that better?
Yes, it is. Because I was looking up Section 6103. I looked it up before. And what is your point on the clarification of the tax returns? Please share.
So it's on the confidentiality of it.
Right.
The chairman of the House and Ways Committee and the Taxation Committee can request it. It says they shall be given, but they have to get the taxpayers' approval because it's confidential, to make it public and to share it with other committees.
That I thought I knew I had read somewhere, and I asked a member of Congress, and he goes, "No, I don't think so. I think," and then Chris Lewis, like, "No, I think you can release it to the public." But to me, it would not be. There was some unfairness to having. It's one thing to get Congress to get it and to look at it for potentially legislating to passing new laws in the future, but to release that person's tax returns to the public seems more punitive than legislative. So to me, that makes more sense what you're saying, Jennifer. And I thought I had saw that somewhere. So I'm going to look up. It's for those following along at home. Open to 26 U.S. Code 6103, and you will see.
And it's
that's
a
the
page
statute.
and a half long. It's
It
not
is.
if you pull it up on the internet. Yeah. So right before, I think it's number 4 is where it tells you they shall receive it.
Mm-hmm.
It's before and after that. They go into all the details about the confidentiality of it and how they have to keep it confidential, which, of course, we wouldn't want people posting our
Right.
tax returns. We wouldn't want anybody to be able to be vindictive and do that.
And think about it. The same thing. If you make political enemies, then the House Ways and Means get your tax returns and makes it public for no other reason but to harass you. And I'm not saying for Trump it's harassment. I think the president, there should be an exception for someone serving in government, that the statute should be amended that a president should have to put up their tax returns. But right now. So, Jennifer, thanks for calling on that, because I think that's an important issue. A lot of people are assuming that the minute the House gets the tax returns, we all get to see that. And that's not accurate. That's not what the way the law says that. And I think there has to be a compelling reason to show it to the public. It's one thing for Congress to get it and look at it essentially in camera, which means like behind closed doors in the court system. And there's another thing to let us all see it. Like, why should I believe I should see the president's tax returns, but that's not the way the statute's written right now. And that's a difference. Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks for the call. That's a good point.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Good point. No, and that's such a good point. And I don't think it's been talked about enough on cable news and discussion. I think the assumption is Richard Neal, the chair of the committee, gets it, and then we see it all the next day. I don't think we're ever going to see it unless Trump...
I think these are semantics, Dean. I'm just going to put it out there.
No, it's not. This is a law.
The problem with liberals and Democrats is that we're getting into the weeds on the wrong shit. Sure, this is the law. All of us do not need to see Donald Trump's tax returns.
No, I think we do, but you got to amend the you have to amend the law to do it. That's all. I think you have to.
There to be an impeachment inquiry.
That's what you want. You want impeachment inquiry.
I need the appropriate members of Congress, whoever they are, on whatever committee they belong to get all the information that they need, which includes Donald Trump's tax returns.
Right, they should see them.
To determine, most specifically, what matters most is not the weeds of what I get to see. What matters most is if they can figure out if this guy is, one, a liar and a crook.
Which we know.
If he is
Guilty.
enriching himself right now on the backs of all of us.
Done. I'm ready to impeach.
If he is cheating the government, if he is beholden and owes money to some foreign entities, whatever it is, I need them to figure that out right away and report back to us on it. I don't need to see the receipts. I need them to be confident in the receipts.
Conclusions. No, but here's the other thing. Here, the practicality. They get the tax returns, and the tax returns are like our tax returns. They're more voluminous, but they're so here are numbers and representations of X. I made $100,000. Let's say he says, Trump on a line, $100,000 income from some source. Now, they don't independently know if that's correct or not. They're not going to go out and investigate. That's where the problem lies. Someone has to do the legwork to go, hey, on line 1, it says he made $100,000 from that entity. In reality, he made $1 million. And that's tax fraud. Someone's got to connect those dots. Someone's going to do that. That's not what House Ways and Means does. But an impeachment inquiry, that might be what they would do. They have investigators. Yeah. That's why another reason we need an impeachment inquiry.
Well, what's been interesting is that, so to the Democrats' credit, when they took over at the beginning of this year, first quarter, is that they actually started hiring a lot of really smart lawyers for these committees who have a track record of white collar crime, of financial crime investigation. So there are people who are working on these committees who, in fact, could do just that.
Right. The MSNBC guy who left, who used to be a prosecutor, he's really good on TV. He went into, I think, on Adam Schiff's committee on Intel or Oversight. I'm not sure. You would know him if you saw him. He was on all the time. So, all right, let's talk about the way we're going to beat Trump no matter what. And that's a 2020 race. Let me ask you, I always say, look at polls in terms of trends, not in terms of this poll says this and that's it. No one knows if that's correct, but we know trends back things up. A new poll came out, Monmouth poll. This backs up a poll not too long ago. Only 37% of voters said they would support Trump in this new poll, and 60% say it's time to have somebody new in the Oval Office. Doesn't mean these numbers can't change, but with the economy where it is now, and on paper, good for a lot of people, frankly, and not great for everyone, but it's not like a situation where we're in a recession. So that's not going to change. Do you think these numbers are closer to baked in than they would normally have been, given where Trump is? He's been stuck at 40 to 44% approval rating in his entire presidency. We've never seen someone that low for this long. Do you think these numbers are potentially more indicative than I would ever say they would be a year and a half out? That he might only have 40 to 41% of the vote. That's all he's going to get in this election?
These numbers are indicative of the electorate. There's always going to be 38 to 41% of the population that is going to vote Republican come hell or high water, no matter who the hell it is. And those are the people who keep showing up in these polls for Donald Trump. And I think that has nothing to do with the economy. It is not the economy, stupid. Right. It is the fact that these people are always going to be the Republican base. It's not Donald Trump, frankly. It would be any Republican that would get 37% of the people. And so so here's my take on polls. And I care deeply about like data and analysis and understanding communities. And none of these polls do that. None of these polls give us insight into community. Well,
how do you do that?
I'm not a pollster, right?
No. But how do you find out when, like?
So the question becomes not: did some people say 60% of the people say that we want that somebody else should be in the White House? Who are those 60% of the people? Where do they reside, and what is going to motivate them to actually come out and vote to make that change? Right. And that is exactly why all the polls are wrong. Well, one of the reasons why all the polls are wrong for Hillary Clinton is that they rarely consider the motivation of likely voters, and then they also miscalculate who exactly the likely voters are. And so it's so early. We're 500 and something days out that the polls are cute and fun because they give us headlines and things to talk about on the TV, and people keep paying for the same trashy methodology that was wrong for Hillary Clinton of using landlines and reaching the 5 old people in America who still actually answer their phone at home and have like Verizon lines. But I think that we kind of get, in my opinion, a little too down in the weeds this far out on what this really means. If you look at trends of just the party dynamics, remember the Republican Party, I should say this, the Democratic Party has also not won a plurality of white voters since 1964 in a presidential election. Right. So there's so many different things that are just about trends. And these polls are picking up on the fact that like 38% of the population are always going to be crazy conservative yahoos. Boom. The end.
So let's talk about an election that's much closer because January, is it the first week of February is Iowa? February. Mm-hmm. First week of is Iowa, February, and then you have New Hampshire right after that, then South Carolina, and then Super Tuesday within a few weeks. So
you missed Nevada.
Nevada. Oh, but what's remarkable is within this first month, because it's Super Tuesday now having California, so many people are going to be gone. We're going to see all these candidates running, and then by March 1st, it'll be down to a handful. Now, again, this is just one poll, Quinnipiac, which is actually a really good poll, and it's national, not local, and people always will say Iowa's actually slightly more important right now. New Hampshire's more important in South Carolina.
They were wrong on Hillary too, by the way.
So right now, Biden, and I looked at a bunch of polls today, and Biden is kind of stuck. He's not dropped. He got a little bump, but he's around 35% consistently. His average on RCP is around Real Clear Politics average around 35%. Sanders has certainly slid, and Warren has certainly gone up. So right now you've got Biden, you've got Sanders still second, then you have Warren, and then depending on the poll, it could be Buttigieg, it could be Harris, right? It depending on what poll you look at. What do you make of this? Because it seems like things are moving, but very, very slightly. And if things don't move much, there'll be a point in time where these will be the numbers that are really going to play out for a short term, for potentially election. And I'm based on history. After the summer, if someone's leading by a lot, I don't remember looking at 538 and others where I saw a Democrat come out of nowhere. Usually these kind of people who implode, it happens during the summer. We're going to have debates. We're going to have people disappear. What do you make of these early polls now?
Well, I think a couple of things are interesting if we're to look at like trends from the last 3 weeks, right? So, or when did Biden jump in? Has it been 4 weeks? Whenever the hell it was. So a couple of things are happening. So with Bernie Sanders, it is clear that Bernie Sanders is actually losing portions of his base to Biden, which is interesting because it's completely not what you would think. You would assume that Elizabeth Warren would be eating into the Bernie crew, but that's actually not what's happening. There are a lot of disaffected white people people, frankly, who are the inverse of the Trump supporters. Like Bernie and Donald Trump actually have the same people, just on different sides. Right. And what is interesting is that Biden is pulling some of those working class white folks away. And what's also interesting about that Quinnipiac poll that you mentioned is that if you kind of dig through there, they talk about how they have a metric there where they show people's opinion of candidates based on how much they're paying attention to the news cycle. And what was really interesting about that to me is that people who are really paying attention to the campaigns, and let me take that back, not the news cycle, the campaigns themselves are really going hard for Elizabeth Warren. And then second, they're into Kamala Harris because they're paying attention to the ideas and the conversation about like what they will do in America. The people who are paying the least attention support Bernie Sanders.
That's name ID, and they knew him from the last race?
I would suggest it's because there's the same kind of a bit passive, lower educated, kind of like meh voter that is the Donald Trump voter, but on opposite sides, one conservative, one liberal. And they're not obsessed with the news cycle and reading every single detail of policy provision. But that was interesting to me because it was shocking to me. I was surprised. I didn't expect that. But that's actually one of the things to me that really jumps out. So I'm expecting that what's going to happen in June, like literally next month when the debates start, is that all the people who are paying attention, these numbers are going to start to get really wanky. And my call is that Elizabeth Warren is going to jump up there and like get much closer to Bernie.
What do you make? And I'm looking at the Quinnipiac poll and that question because I was going to ask you about that because more on age issue because I was not surprised but sort of surprised. Sorry, not sorry type of thing. I was surprised. But of people, they asked Republicans and Democrats, are you a lot interested? 44% of Americans overall said they were a lot interested. That's the word, a lot versus some. 53% of Republicans were a lot. Of Democrats, only 44%. That concerned me. I don't like that. I don't know why they're not 90% of Democrats a lot interested in what's going on. Any sense of what that means?
You're right. I mean, I was alarmed by that too. We all need to be completely revved up and freaked out and like animated about what's going on, people. I'm so concerned about an enthusiasm gap. I think we resisted and we got the majority. We don't remember resist moniker completely disappeared after Nancy Pelosi took the gavel. We actually don't have a rallying cry right now. There's not a there and a thing for this 2020 cycle. Like, what are we saying? I guess dump Trump is a thing, but not even as much. And so I'm nervous about the enthusiasm gap and what's going to go down.
So by age, and this is not surprising, but it's disappointing because I know where these younger people are going to go. So they ask people, are you following a lot, somewhat, only a little? Of a lot, this is not surprising that the group most following it are 65 and older, which is probably why it skews Republican right now, because that's what tends to be Republican. There. The next group who's following it a lot, almost 50%, 50 to 64, 35 to 49, 41%. Coming in way last, which is really bad for us, 18 to 34 years old, only 28% are following it a lot. That's way down. And those are young people who tend to skew for us. We have to somehow reach them. That's why I was touting Leslie Jones on SNL Saturday and played the clip on the show and talked about it, how with that viral comedy bit about Alabama law and women, you don't oppress me, people who don't follow politics who are young are going to share that. And they're going to learn about the Alabama law. We're like, how do you not know about it? Well, a lot of people don't know about it, but we know that Leslie Jones and things like that. That's why President Obama did Between the Two Ferns with Zach Galifianakis. Yeah. That stuff means something. We've got to get younger people. We're not going to win if we say 28% of only 28% of 18 to 34-year-olds care about this election. We need that number way up, and the higher that gets, the better it is for us.
Here's also what's in that poll, Dean.
Age?
That demographic of age that you're talking about largely appreciate Elizabeth Warren and then Kamala Harris because they're ideas people. Do you think that they give a damn about? So this is what I said this morning on Woke with Danielle.
You were on Woke this morning with Danielle
Moodie-Mills.
How'd you get booked for that?
Is that
I'm kidding.
I don't know. Here's the interesting thing, guys, that we need to be reminded about is that God bless Joe Biden. But the retail politics, the kind of good old, pat on the shoulder network of the way that we used to do things does not appeal to this younger generation. Nothing about Black people's life outcomes has dramatically changed in the 40-something years that Joe Biden's been hugging people. And so what we're looking for now, and what that generation is looking for, is someone who has solutions that is literally going to change the outcomes of America and the outcomes of communities. And the people who are currently at the top aren't well, I'd say Joe Biden's not really offering that in an interesting way, and neither is Beto O'Rourke for that matter. So yeah, the young people want to know what you going to do, and not just what babies you going to kiss, but what you going to do.
Of people who are 50 plus, Biden's getting 46% of them. Almost half of people 50 plus. Sanders 8% and Warren 9%. It's interesting. What I also found interesting is among very liberal voters who they're supporting. Liz Warren, 30% among those who are self-described very liberal. Sanders, 22%. So that's a breaking towards Warren of people I think would have went with Sanders. Then Biden comes in at 19 and Harris at 13. And it's funny to see.
I think it's interesting that Harris is below Biden on that, by the way.
It is. Maybe that's name recognition, but it's also interesting to see how things are playing out among other names that I thought would be on this list. And they're nowhere to be found.
Like Booker? Where is
Cory
Cory?
Booker.
Where is Cory?
Even Julian Castro, I actually thought would be a more impressive guy, in that I just expected more for whatever reason. It's just not happening.
Are you confusing him with Joaquin?
Maybe.
His twin brother.
But there's a point, too, where when these numbers actually start to matter. Like they really mean something. Because if you're at 1% and then you're at 3% and then you're at 5%, like we're moving up. When you're at 1% and you're getting town halls and you're out there and you're campaigning for months in Iowa, New Hampshire, and you're still at 1 or 2%, your message or you are not being bought by the people. There's a point in time where, and no one's going to drop out before the debates. I get it. But there's a point in time where I hope some of these candidates in the early fall, as opposed to later, let us see more of the front runners. So, because these first debates will be 12 and 12 maybe. Each one talks for 2-3 bites. It's like
two nights in a row.
It's like us going on cable news, though, with 4 other people on the panel. You know you're going to get to say 2 things, right? With 12 people, it's not like Hillary and Bernie where we see half the questions each. Literally, your favorite candidate might answer 2 questions or 3.
Yeah.
I think they set themselves
Which is
apart.
why these town halls, I think, have actually been really good.
They're
because
much
people have been able to showcase themselves.
Yeah, I watched some of Beto's. I thought he did a good job. I've watched a little bit of different people. I didn't watch anyone's completely. Let's take a break, though. Come back with Aisha Moodie-Mills. You're listening to the Dino Bidala Show, where we crush Trump's lies every single day.
On Sirius XM Progress 127.
You're listening to the Dean Obeidallah Show, Sirius XM's Progress.
And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. We got a few minutes before the next commercial, but we're here with our friend Aisha Moodie-Mills. Aisha, let me ask you about the politics of abortion here, and I don't want to be crass about it. I'm being just point blank about politics. We know what they're doing. I call it Christian Sharia law. It's horrific. Mm-hmm. They want to oppress women. They've always wanted to oppress women. Now they have the chance to do it. What about the 2020? There's always a debate, who does it bring out more, our side or their side? Mm. And what's your reaction to making a woman's right to have freedom over her own body a bigger issue for Democrats?
Yeah. So here is, and in the break, guys, Dean brought up a really good and interesting analogy about LGBT rights and the ballot. Here's what I have seen in my short 20 years of just doing political work, is that when you put these really, really, really divisive civil rights-y type of issues on the ballot, it always brings out their crazy people. Liberals don't get that excited and animated for if you look at like the Ballot Initiative Strategy Center or whatever they're called, BISC, these ballot measures that get to like the heart of the ugly, they bring out more of them who are like, yeah, squander those people, than they do of us. And most of the places that game has been played, and I think about 2004 was the wicked year of the anti-marriage amendments on the ballots. Mm-hmm. And my gosh, I mean, that was, and of course, you know, at the time it was still a wedge issue. Democrats weren't supportive of LGBT equality, so that was a bit of a different time. But we did not win at the ballot box. We lost Proposition 8 in frickin' California, for crying out loud. We actually won through the courts and then ultimately through the legislatures. It was not at the ballot. So it gets to be like a really tricky thing when you put those wedge issues out, especially when they're so controversial, because I, as a pro-choice person, and I talk to other pro-choice people, are not necessarily so like, yeah, I want to get my abortion, that we jump up and down for that. That's something that's not necessarily a badge of honor and about pridefulness, as it is about like necessity and decisions that you make in times of crisis. So it's not necessarily the spirited and exciting boost that one needs for a GOTV campaign. I guess there could be a fear tactic there, but I don't know.
What about framing it about just freedom, about men telling women you have less freedom and we are men? I mean, Alabama was the most grotesque example in the Senate there with the 25 men. What, less about abortion and more about freedom? It's
a good PR campaign, and that PR campaign is going to take at least a decade to really unwind. Remember, you know, back to the gay analogy, freedom to marry, and Evan Wolfson created this kind of freedom to marry narrative, and that freedom to marry took a while to grab hold, but it worked legislatively. Wasn't a thing that won the people's hearts and minds at the ballot box in the same way. I don't know. I get nervous about that, because what could we do is we might be dooming ourselves to just like say, oh, we're going to put 12 ballot measures up and then completely doom ourselves in like 12 states when we didn't have to do that. I don't know.
And I guess it's sort of like the debate with impeachment, just on the political end of it. What's right or what's wrong, you don't know till after Election Day. And afterwards, you're like, you were an idiot. What did you do that for? Or, wow, you were a genius. You really were ahead of the curve. None of us know it. But you can look at history a little bit, and in 2004, there were 11 ballot measures on to ban gay marriage. All 11 passed. Bush won 9 of the 11. I know this. I was looking this up today. I don't know these things. I don't walk around with these in my head.
You're a genius.
And the debate is, Pew and others said it seemed to have helped the turnout for the Republicans a few percentage points, but they're not sure if they came out just for that or they would have came out anyway. No one knows the answer to that because they weren't doing that kind of exit poll. Like, did you really come out to vote because you hate gay people? Or did you come out because you like Bush? Or was it one and the same anyway? So it's interesting. And I'm working on a new article. I'll share it tomorrow for the Daily Beast tomorrow here. But let's take a quick break. We'll come right back.
Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress 127. Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.
And welcome back to the Nobi Dollar Show. Last minutes here with Aisha Moodie-Mills. Aisha, you're going to be on Danielle's show tomorrow again?
No, I don't think so. We'll see.
So Danielle's this week and next week, and it's alternating people in the morning.
6 to 9 a.m. drive time.
And then tomorrow, though, you'll be on CNN with Don Lemon at 11 p.m.
Yes.
Say hi to Don. I haven't seen him in a while. I used to go on his show, but a lot of times, and I said no last time, and I think they got annoyed, I would go on invariably at 11:54 p.m.
I'm on like 11:20, 11:40.
So and they go like, you're going to be on at 11 o'clock
end of the
hour.
show.
And I go, when? They go, we're not sure. I'm like, just say it. Say I'm going to be at 11:54. And the worst part is you get on 11:54, so you're sitting around the green for like an hour, and they get on, they go, oh, the other blocks ran long, so you're going to have like 1 minute each to talk. So it's me and two other people. And I'm like, oh, why did I do that? And I go home, I'm just tired, and no one tweets about your appearance because like it didn't even exist. Where can people follow you on Twitter, though?
At AISHA Mood, MOOD, Mills.
Folks, thanks for tuning in. Look forward. Tomorrow we'll take more calls. I'm sorry we didn't get as many calls as I wanted to take tonight. We had a lot of phone calls, and I appreciate your calls all the time. Please call back. Email me, dean@deanofradio.com, or on Twitter, @Dean Obidala. Have a great night. Look forward to chatting with you right here, The Dean Obidala Show, Sirius XM Progress 127.